Hello! In this Unity tutorial today, I'm going to go over how to use the new input system to control a player on your screen. And you're going to be able to do that using the keyboard or the gamepad all at the same time. So let me open up this project I have here. The first scene I have is not using the new input system, but the original input system of Unity. And on the script, I just use the input object. This function here is just so I could display on the screen like what the values are. With the legacy system, if I press play, I'm using the WASD keys to move, spacebar to jump. I also could use the arrow keys to move. I could go ahead and take my gamepad and I could use the gamepad to move too. And you'd be like, oh, that's sweet. I could do all those things. Why would I use any other system? Well, because the way to set this up in the legacy system is kind of hard. I have a video tutorial on the channel here on how to do that. But basically, if you look at the old way, I'd say edit, project settings, input manager, and then when I read the input manager, there's like this axes thing. So this all has to get set up. It's kind of like it's textual. It's not okay. So there's another tutorial I have with that. But we're going to go over on this tutorial how to do this with the new input system instead of the old legacy input system. So then let me go to my new input system scene. One difference is this isn't going to all work with just my script. It's going to work with the new input system. I have to install the package for the new input system. So I'd have to go to Windows Package Manager, and I could look in the Unity registry for a package. I could just filter, type the name input, and there's the input system package, which I already installed. And when you install this package, just a heads up, it's going to ask to restart your Unity project. With the new input system package installed, after you install the input system package, the next thing you have to do is you have to create like a mapping definition. So you do that by making an input action asset. So right here in the project window, I right click, create input actions, and I get an asset there. I could just call this Mopey controls. I'm gonna double click to edit this input asset. So you get this input actions editor window with 3 columns. The first column, you have to name the map. If you're playing the character and he's on his feet, that's one map. Then if you're playing the character and he jumps in a car or airplane, the controls, you could have another mapping for the set of controls in your car or airplane. Won't be on foot. Now, what are going to be the controls? What are going to be the actions you could do? So one is he's going to be able to move. So let me take this first default action here. I'm going to rename it to move. It's going to be a value type of an action, not a button. And the control type is going to be a vector 2. And then over here on the move, I'm going to open this arrow and then I'm going to bind it. For this first default binding, I'm gonna bind that first default binding to the gamepad. So with that selected, I'm going to go ahead over here and click on the path. And I don't know why the graphics are messed up, but there's a listen button over here, which you could barely see. It highlights gray. I'm going to click the listen button. I know it's not showing on my screen, but hopefully it shows for yours. I'm going to just jiggle the left stick. Bam. And that was nice. It figured out I just moved the left stick. That's what I want to do for the move. I'm going to pick Gamepad, the more generic one, instead of specifically the Xbox. Now I want to add one more thing because I want to also be able to use the keyboard. So over here, I'm going to add more bindings, right? And I'm going to add a up, down, left, right composite. Okay, and up, down, left, right composite is showing because my move action type is a value and it's a vector 2. So in case you don't see that, make sure you set move to value in vector 2 so that when you add a binding, this is an option that's available. So I'm going to click that. And now you see it has this like 4 buttons, a 2D vector input. So I'm going to call this one WASD input. And now I'm going to define the binding on the up. So I do it, I click the listen button right there, and then up is going to be W. I select W. Down, click the listen button, press S. Select S. Left, listen, A. Select A. And right, click that listen button. D. Select D. So WASD, I got that mapping. A lot of times you get to use the WASD and you could use the arrow keys. So let me add another one here. And this one I'll call arrow keys. And for up, it's going to be, what is it going to be for up? Let's press the up arrow. Bam. For down, gonna press the down arrow. Select down arrow. For left, click path, click listen. Left is going to be the left arrow. And the last one there is right, path, listen, and right arrow. I'm going to click right. Okay, so now for the move, I could do it with the gamepad. I could do it with the WASD keys, and I define WASD, and I could do it with the arrow keys, up, down, left, and right. I got 3 different methods to do the move. The other action that I had with the legacy example was jumping. So let's add a new action here, add new action, and I'll call this jump. And jump is going to be a button press. So I leave it as action type is button. And now I click on the binding, and the first binding I'll do is I click path, I click listen, and I got my controller plugged into my computer. I press A. So it knows I had an Xbox controller specifically, or I could use the more generic button south. I'm going to pick the more generic. I'm going to add another binding here. It's a 1-button press. What else could I press for jumping? Listen. I'm going to press the space bar. Bam, space. Select that. On my input actions editor, there could be a save button here, or I could use autosave. Then for Mopey, I'm going to have to add a component to be able to read this input asset. I add a input component. I select player input component. It adds a component here. Then it's going to ask me for what is my action, what's my asset, right? So here I could just click this and I could pick Mopey mapping. All right, so now I have something set up that's communicating using the new input system, using this mapping definitions I made over here, and this is going to communicate to the game object. So something in my game object has to listen to those communications. That's what's going to be in my script. Over here in the small text under behavior, the behavior that I'm using to communicate with my game object is going to be send messages. And here it lists all the different messages that will currently be sent using Mopey mapping input definition. So the first 1, 2, 3, they're always the same. On device lost, on device regained, on controls changed. Then these last 2 are based upon the actions that I put in my mapping definition. So I put move and jump. So here it's going to make an on move send message and an on jump send message. Okay? So I'm just going to keep that in my head. On move, on jump. Now when I go to my script, I just want to have something that reads on move and on jump. So I make these functions with this signature, private void, on move. I want to read the value that's being sent to me, so I say input value, and I give it the input value. And then on jump, the same thing. Jump is a button press, right? So I don't even need to know the value. The button is pressed, so I just go ahead and make the character jump. Okay. The rest of the stuff here is whatever. This is to display the text on the screen. This moves the character. Let me explain this part. Since these are messages, the message is sent when the action happens on the controller or the keyboard. The message is sent, but the message it's sent one time. So that works with jump. I press the jump button, I just press it, and then the jump action happens one time. But with move, I move the move joystick, or I press the move button. That happens one time, but when I'm holding the button down, or when I'm holding the left stick forward, I want it to keep moving. So that's not going to be able to happen here. in the message receiver, since that only happens when the value changes. So I'll take whatever the move value is from the value object, and I know that onMove is a vector 2. Remember, I set it as a vector 2. So I get the vector 2 of the value, converts it to a vector 2 for me, and I'll save it in a member variable of my script. And then in the update function that happens, repeatedly, I'll use whatever the move value is and do what the move value says. So if the move value is 0, I don't move at all back and forth. Then the move value has 2. It's a vector 2, so the y is the up down. I'm going to use that to move back and forth, and the x is the left right. I'm going to use that to turn my character, rotate him left and right. Okay, so the move one was just a little bit trickier. I store the value, and then I actually do the movement in the update function. Let's see if this is ready to try to run. Okay, I explained the input asset. I explained that you have to install the package for an input system. I explained the player input component that you have to put on your game object, and the player input component reads the mapping and sends the messages to your script. And then the script does that. Let's see if this works. Let me go over here and do a save and then do a play. Let's see if it works or it just all, crashes and burns. All right, so new input system. I'm not touching anything yet. The input move values are 0. If I press A, he jumps. I press A on the joystick. I press A on the gamepad, and he jumps. He jumps. What was the other button I said? If I press space, so I'm going to press space on the keyboard, he jumps. Yeah, that's great. Okay, the jump works. Now let's try the movement. I'll try it from the gamepad first. Let me take the left stick of the gamepad. That's what I mapped it to, and I'll move the left stick around. And yes, he moves. He turns left and right. He moves forward and backward. That's with the gamepad. What else did I do it with? I did it with WASD. So on the keyboard, let me try WSAND. Okay, so he's moving around with the WASD. What's the other keys I did with the arrows? So let me press the arrows and see if that's working. Yup, it's working. WASD. So I have all these controls. It took a little bit longer to set up, but I have like definite absolute control over this with this input asset, this input action asset where I can define everything. Excuse me, I'm dying. And that's the tutorial, guys.